So the topic of people looking generally more soy or baby-faced today is a very interesting one, right? Because it's being talked about, and I feel like adding my 5 cents. And they are that, of course, it is to do with endocrinology, to do with plastics and the balls and just generally depleted soils. If we started fertilizing the soil with synthetic chemical fertilizers, the soils became depleted because the soils need manure and they need leaves, and it's only these two things that are gonna sort of like make the food correct. So the food is depleted. There's toxins in the environment. There's plastic in the balls, and so especially men look more baby-faced because men have more yang. They burn easier, so they waste energy easier. Women have it easier to sort of consolidate body mass generally, consolidate especially tissue around the hips. But it's not the only reason, right? It's not the only reason. Another reason that might be missed is uh, the fact that people generally wanted to look older, especially guys, to show that they were ready for this sort of chivalrous programming that was set up for them, right? So you wanted to show uh, society and the world that, oh, you're ready to go out and till the fields or be the cowboy or if you're a company man or whatever. But it's also more visible in cultures that are more labor prone. I live in Sweden where there's a lot of Arabs, and you see that Arabs just are in a hurry to look old. They really are, oftentimes, right? They'll get mustaches at very early ages, whereas the Swede is just like barely out of the cradle, that is. And this is epigenetic, right? Because the physiology feels a necessity to grow up faster because there's more demand in the physical world and labor world to sort of get things over with, to sort of um, you know become a man, do the whole husbandry spiel. And this is also changing because people feel like there's more space and time to Peter Pan these days, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because it does mean that you can explore better and more what it is you actually want to be doing, right? You don't have the chip on the shoulder of the dad who says you gotta go into the fields just like I did. You got a cowboy, or you gotta take over the company, or even just you gotta get a job because that's what you do, right? So everything has a bad and a good polarity, or a negative and a positive polarity. So it's that's the second thing, right? It's the epigenetic. I also noticed this in because I have Polish heritage, but I was born in Sweden. And I go to Poland and I see my cousins and they look like me, but it's like someone has turned up the thermostat on them and they just have like more like leathery skin and more hair in their face, and I'm like, that's the Polish thermostat being upturned, right? Because there's still more like socioeconomic vibration in Poland that sort of demands of the physiology to sort of look more the part. Um, yeah, and that's the number two point. But even more interestingly, which I think maybe people miss, is time. Time was faster in the 50s and 60s when people in high school looked like they were like 35. Time was faster, so the valence of a year was not a year. The valence of a year was more than a year, so to speak. And today it's sort of the opposite. We live very, very uh, much more slowly on the one level. This is difficult to talk about because it's sort of paradoxical. On the one hand, there is tremendous accelerationism. Every day is new in terms of invention and technology, and in terms of the media. Every day something new is sort of brought up, and something new is en jeu. But that doesn't mean that the body is sort of aging faster necessarily, right? Because there's such a strong reaction to the accelerationism that you really do retreat from uh, physiologically participating in this. So you're like, I'm gonna be a child even longer because there's so much bullshit out there. I really need to sort things out. I really need to like be a child longer so I can see what is what and what there is for me to do in this world. And the whole remaining a Peter Pan for longer sort of ties into um, the shift, right? So if you're into the shift, if you are tuning into um, the generation of the new earth that is heavenly, with the Galactic Federation having set up lives here again, or interaction at least, then you probably have stumbled upon how Pleiadians, which we are modeled after a lot of the times, because Pleiadians look the most human out of all the extraterrestrials, so to speak. They are sort of always looking 25, right? They don't really age beyond looking like 25. And I think this is also something we are heading towards, because this is when, after 25 is when the withering starts, sort of, and we start looking not just older but more worn out. So I think like in the future we will look more stark in time, looks wise, like always fresh, always yeah. So we have these 3 points: endocrinology due to toxins, but also epigenetics based on socioeconomic demands and expectations from previous generation in terms of taking responsibility and looking more responsible, right? And then number three is actually time in itself. Time is no longer. I think someone said that a year is now 9 months only. So if you're like 30 years old, you're not really 30 years old, right? You're much younger. And this is also changing all the time. So it's becoming less than 9 months. All right. Thank you for tuning in.